Take a deep breath and allow your thoughts to settle like quiet ripples spreading across a still lake. The world outside can wait. For now, there is only this moment, soft and slow, the sound of your own breathing, the gentle hum of life continuing in the background. Sometimes reflection begins not with a loud realization, but with the silence between two heartbeats. It is in that silence that we begin to see things as they are, not as we hoped they might be. To find oneself entangled in a relationship with a married man is not always a story of betrayal or deceit. More often, it is a story of longing, a deep, almost instinctive desire to connect, to be seen, to be understood in a way that life rarely allows. Love does not always ask permission before it arrives. It comes softly, often disguised as friendship or comfort, or shared laughter over something small. Before you know it, something has begun, something you never planned, something you might not have even believed yourself capable of. And yet, here you are. Many women who find themselves in such a situation do not begin with intention. They do not wake up one day and say, "I will love someone who belongs to another." It happens in moments, in glances, in words that feel too kind to ignore. He listens in a way others do not. He makes you feel visible in a world that has grown indifferent. You see in him a kind of calm that feels safe, a maturity that promises understanding. He carries himself with confidence, the kind that only comes from experience, and that confidence can be magnetic. You may tell yourself, "I am not doing anything wrong. We are just talking. We are just close." But beneath that quiet justification, your heart knows what it feels. Psychology calls this the pull of emotional validation. It is when another person reflects back to you the parts of yourself you had forgotten. The warmth, the intelligence, the charm, the softness. You begin to feel alive again, seen again. And that sensation can be addictive. It's not always about love itself, but about what love represents: belonging, acceptance, tenderness. Yet somewhere behind the warmth of connection, there lies a quiet unease, like a shadow that grows longer each day. It is the awareness that something is incomplete, that this love, however pure it feels, has no room to breathe in the daylight. Philosophers have often said that human beings are drawn to what they lack. When you seek someone who is unavailable, it might not be the man himself you are drawn to, but the idea of being chosen despite the odds. It feels like proof of worth. The mind whispers, "If he loves me, even though he has a life elsewhere, I must be special." It is a comforting illusion, and it feeds a need that runs deeper than logic. Yet in truth, what we long for is not always what nourishes us. Sometimes the heart confuses attention for affection, and affection for devotion. To understand this is not to condemn yourself, it is to look gently at the reality beneath your emotions. Every person carries invisible wounds, from childhood, from rejection, from loneliness. Some part of you may have been waiting to be chosen all your life, waiting for someone to see your worth, without you having to ask. So when this man enters your world, with his calm voice and his steady presence, it feels like the universe has finally sent what you've been missing. And yet the truth is that the universe does not send people to complete us. It sends them to reveal the parts of ourselves that still need to heal. There is also the quiet allure of what cannot fully be yours. The forbidden has always held a strange power over the human mind. In the study of psychology, this is known as reactance. The desire for something increases when it is restricted. When love is forbidden, it begins to glow brighter in our imagination. We give it meaning. We give it weight. We tell ourselves that it must be extraordinary if it demands such sacrifice. But this is the mind's illusion at play, the romanticization of what is limited, the turning of reality into dream. Days may pass where everything feels perfectly normal, messages exchanged in secret, moments stolen between responsibilities. You learn his habits, his voice, his silences. You begin to adapt to the rhythm of his world without realizing how much of yours has gone quiet. You make excuses for why he cannot call, why he cannot stay, why he must go. And each time you promise yourself you understand, you convince yourself that love requires patience, that someday it will all make sense. But in the quiet hours, when the phone remains still and your thoughts begin to wander, a soft ache rises from somewhere deep. It is not just loneliness. It is the awareness of existing in between, not fully his, not fully free. The human psyche has an astonishing ability to rationalize pain. You may tell yourself, "He loves me in his own way." You may say he is trapped in a difficult situation. You may believe that what you share is different, that it defies ordinary definitions. But the subconscious mind, that quiet observer beneath all thought, knows the cost. Records every unanswered message, every postponed plan, every half-kept promise. It knows that love, when it cannot walk openly in the world, begins to erode the one thing it was meant to nurture: your peace. And yet, this does not make you foolish. It makes you human. You are exploring the limits of what love can bear. You are walking the thin line between truth and desire, between compassion and self-betrayal. It is part of the human experience to seek meaning in connections that test our boundaries. Philosophy tells us that suffering becomes wisdom when it is seen clearly. The first step, then, is not to blame yourself or the man you love, but to see how longing, hope, and fear all intertwine, creating a web that feels inescapable, but is made entirely of thoughts and feelings. Some evenings, you might find yourself wondering about the other side, about his home, his partner, his family. You may feel guilt, confusion, empathy, even resentment. It is a complex landscape, one where emotions contradict each other. In this space, philosophy invites you to be kind with yourself, to observe your emotions without judgment, to notice how attachment often grows not from abundance, but from scarcity, from the places where we feel unseen or unfulfilled. Every human heart, at some point, seeks what it cannot have. It is not a moral failure, but a mirror, showing us where we are still searching for ourselves in others. And though it may hurt, the very act of awareness begins to loosen the knot. The more you understand the hidden reasons behind your attachment, the less control they hold over you. In that awareness, there is the beginning of calm, the quiet before a new kind of clarity. The mind begins to whisper not what it wants, but what it truly needs. And perhaps for the first time, you will start to listen. The human heart is an ocean of hidden tides, each wave shaped by memories, needs, and the invisible threads of longing that tie one life to another. When a woman finds herself drawn into a relationship with a married man, she steps into an emotional terrain that feels both familiar and foreign. Familiar because it mirrors her deepest desires for love and connection, and foreign because it exists outside the boundaries that society quietly teaches us to respect. Yet, what makes this space so powerful is not merely its secrecy, but the psychology that unfolds beneath it, the quiet workings of the mind that builds stories, attach meanings, and create emotional maps that seem impossible to escape. In the stillness of reflection, it becomes clear that this kind of connection often begins not with deceit, but with recognition. There is a certain resonance, a feeling that he sees you, understands you, values you. In him, you find what feels like emotional safety, a kind of listening that feels deeper than words. He asks questions that others forget to ask. He notices the pauses between your sentences, the tone in your laughter, the exhaustion in your silence. You tell yourself that it's not about taking something from someone else. It's about finally being seen. The human psyche thrives on recognition. It feeds the very foundation of identity. When someone mirrors back your essence, even imperfectly, your mind responds with gratitude and attachment. You begin to believe that this bond is fated, that it must have meaning because it feels so true. But the psyche also plays tricks. It is capable of bending reality to fit what it wants to believe. This is where the first hidden variable begins to surface, the phenomenon of projection. You are not only loving this man for who he is, you are also loving what he represents. He becomes a vessel for your unmet needs, a mirror reflecting your longing for stability, warmth, or perhaps a sense of belonging that life has quietly denied you. He might embody qualities that once felt absent in your past, the patience of a father, the presence of a partner you never had, the understanding of a friend who never left. In him, the unconscious mind begins to recreate the emotional balance it has long been missing. Psychology calls this transference, a natural process where we transfer unresolved emotions from old relationships into new ones, hoping to find healing through repetition. But in the stillness between those moments, another truth begins to whisper. You notice how the waiting has reshaped your life. You begin to see the places where joy once lived freely now filled with hesitation. You realize that your laughter feels quieter, your confidence more fragile, your dreams paused in midair. Philosophy tells us that every attachment comes with a cost, not because love is wrong, but because love asks us to give something of ourselves. The question is always, what are we giving and what remains when the giving is done? Sometimes the mind holds on because it fears emptiness. It believes that the absence of love will be worse than the pain of uncertainty. But emptiness is not always loss. Sometimes it is the beginning of clarity. When you are no longer chasing a half-kept promise, you start to rediscover the still parts of yourself, the ones that remember solitude as peace, not punishment. Yet reaching that point requires honesty, the kind of honesty that does not blame, but simply observes. To look at your life and see where waiting has replaced living, where dreams have turned into delays, where love has become a negotiation with yourself. There is also a quiet compassion that must be extended, not only toward him, but toward yourself. Compassion to understand that you stayed because you needed to learn what love should not cost. Compassion to see that your patience was not weakness, but a reflection of how deeply you were willing to believe in another. Compassion to acknowledge that the woman who waits is not foolish. She is simply human, loyal, emotional, hopeful. Her mistake is not loving too much, but forgetting that love must flow both ways to remain alive. In daily life, these realizations come slowly. You may find them while doing ordinary things, folding clothes, standing in line, looking out the window at dusk. It is in these quiet acts that awareness begins to surface, reminding you that time does not pause for anyone, that every day spent waiting is a day taken from your own unfolding. You begin to notice how much of your energy is spent in anticipation, how much of your peace depends on another's decision. You begin to ask small questions that hold great power. What would my life feel like if I didn't wait?
What would love look like if it was free to exist in the open?
Psychology and philosophy meet here, at this turning point between desire and truth. One reminds you of the mind's patterns, the other of the soul's purpose. Together they offer a quiet revelation, that the pain of waiting is not meant to destroy you, but to awaken you. Each ache, each lonely night, each unanswered call carries a lesson about your own resilience. You start to realize that love, even when it breaks you, is still a teacher. It teaches you where you end and another begins. It teaches you that peace cannot be borrowed, and that waiting for someone to complete you is a gentle forgetting of your own wholeness. And as these realizations begin to unfold, the waiting changes shape. It no longer feels like devotion, but reflection. It no longer defines you, but begins to reveal you. The silence that once hurt begins to speak in a softer tone, whispering truths that were always there, just waiting for you to listen. Breathe slowly now, as if the world around you has finally allowed you a moment to rest. The mind has wandered through longing and waiting, through illusion and discovery, and now it begins to return to itself. The story of being in love with a married man is not just about him or about circumstance, but about the quiet evolution of your own inner world. Somewhere between the ache and the awakening, something inside you begins to stir, a soft, almost imperceptible awareness that whispers that healing does not come from being chosen by another, but from choosing yourself with gentle conviction. Philosophy tells us that every experience, no matter how painful, carries within it the seed of understanding. You may not have asked for this chapter, but it has revealed things about love that peaceful days rarely could. It has shown you the difference between being needed and being valued, between passion and peace, between connection that expands you and attachment that confines you. These realizations do not arrive all at once. They unfold quietly, often in the background of ordinary moments. The morning coffee, the long walks alone, the stillness before sleep. Each moment reminds you that clarity is not loud. It grows like dawn, gentle but unstoppable. The human psyche is resilient, but it heals best through acceptance rather than resistance. You may still feel echoes of him, his voice, his laughter, the way he made the world seem smaller and simpler for a while. The mind does not erase memories just because the heart is ready to move on. But over time, those echoes soften. They lose their urgency. They stop asking for answers and begin to rest as part of the story that shaped you. Psychology calls this integration, the process of accepting an experience as part of who you are, rather than something to fight against. When you integrate rather than deny, pain loses its sharpness, and love becomes memory rather than obsession. Healing does not mean forgetting him. It means remembering yourself more fully. There is a quiet rediscovery that happens after such an experience, a return to your own rhythm. You begin to wake without checking your phone. You make plans without waiting for his schedule to open. You start to feel time again, not as something to be endured, but as something to be lived. It is strange at first, this independence. It feels almost empty. But slowly, emptiness turns into space, and space turns into possibility. You begin to fill that space with things that belong entirely to you. Your thoughts, your laughter, your peace. Philosophy often speaks of freedom not as the absence of limits, but as the acceptance of reality. To see clearly without clinging or denial is to be free. The love you carried was real in its feeling, but not always in its form. Taught you how much the heart can endure, and how easily it can forget itself in the name of connection. The lesson is not that love should be avoided, but that it should be chosen consciously, with awareness, with truth, with boundaries that protect your peace. The moment you begin to see that your worth was never tied to his decisions, something inside you exhales. You no longer need to be chosen, because you have already chosen yourself. In the soft science of the mind, there is something known as emotional regulation, the gentle balancing of feeling and understanding. It is the process of soothing your inner world when your emotions run deep. You begin to learn that peace is not the absence of feeling, but the ability to sit with it without drowning. Some days the ache may return unexpectedly, a memory, a smell, a song that once belonged to both of you. But instead of resisting it, you begin to observe it, as one observes clouds passing through a quiet sky. You let it move, knowing that feelings are like weather, temporary, shifting, always changing. There is also a deeper form of forgiveness that begins to take root. Not the kind you offer to him with words, but the one you offer to yourself in silence. Forgiveness for staying too long. Forgiveness for believing promises that could not be kept. Forgiveness for all the times you confused attention with love. It is in this forgiveness that your heart begins to lighten. You no longer carry the weight of what if or maybe someday. You simply carry the wisdom of having felt deeply and survived. Philosophy would call this the beginning of equanimity, a steady peace of mind that does not depend on what happens outside you. It is not indifference but balance. You still feel, but the feelings no longer shake your foundation. You begin to see that life is not divided into right or wrong choices, but into lessons and awakenings. Even this love, this forbidden tenderness served its purpose. It showed you your capacity for devotion, your courage to love despite fear, and your strength to walk away despite longing. There is beauty even in what could not last, because it taught you to meet yourself honestly. The quietest part of healing is often the most profound, the return to ordinary life. You find beauty in simplicity again, the sunlight on the kitchen counter, the laughter of strangers, the rhythm of your own steps on the pavement. The things you once overlooked begin to glow again. You realize that love was never meant to be confined to one person. It was meant to flow through everything, through your kindness, your patience, your creativity, your quiet resilience. Love was never gone. It was simply waiting to be redirected. As time moves forward, you begin to see him differently too, not as the man who defined your story, but as a character in it, one who appeared to reveal something essential about your inner world. There is no anger in this perspective, only distance and understanding. You no longer look back with bitterness, but with the calm recognition that both of you were doing the best you could within the limits of your awareness. The connection, though painful, served its purpose. It brought you to this point, to yourself. Psychology suggests that the greatest form of healing is self-actualization. The realization that you are capable of creating meaning, no matter what life brings. You start to understand that the ending of one story is not the absence of love, but the transformation of it. What you gave, what you felt, what you learned, all of it becomes part of your quiet strength. You no longer wait for closure, because you have already found something greater: understanding.